Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Thursday morning, March the 31st. I'm happy to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, and we're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And I'm just putting the chat room up right now, and I want to continue looking at it and sort of finish up looking at an article about dysfunctional families, and it's from the Mudrashram Institute of Spiritual Studies, www.mudrashram.com, and M-U-D-R-A-S-H-R-A-M, mudrashram.com. It's an article written by George A. Boyd, 1992. It's called "When You Grow Up in a Dysfunctional Family." But it's a really good article, and I think it's been helpful for me. So I hope everybody's gotten something out of this. We've been on this for weeks now, but it's worth looking at. It gives a little bit of different look at what can happen when people grow up in a dysfunctional family and the negative kind of programming that sort of takes place, and people take on these behaviors and these roles, may not know what proper boundaries are, and the difference between healthy families and dysfunctional families, right? So I found it very informational and really good information, so hopefully everybody else got something out of this too. And so that's what I'm looking at this morning. I'm not a counselor or therapist, and I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own shows, and you have to listen at your own discretion. I'm talking about abuse, and abuse is sensitive. It's a sensitive topic, sensitive subject, and I think a lot of people may find the information, it could make you uncomfortable. So you have to ultimately know what's good for you to listen to when you're listening to my shows. And, if topics of abuse might bother you, it is your discretion to turn the show off, right? So listen at your own discretion. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to any of my shows and all of my shows, because even though it's all about stopping child abuse and the issues that surround child abuse, there's a lot of adult material on my shows, and I don't know how young the people are who are listening. So make sure that you have permission from an adult, a parent, or caregiver, somebody who's older, who can help you make a decision whether you should be listening to my shows, right? Just to age appropriately, right? I have no idea how young the people are who are listening to my shows. So that's why it's very important for me to let you know that you need to protect yourself when you're online, and you need to, especially when there's a chat room present, and you need to be careful what you're listening to. And, because the topics of abuse, like I said, they're very sensitive, and if people haven't heard a whole lot about abuse and the topics of abuse and violence and whatnot, it can kind of, it can be scary for people to listen to if they haven't heard a whole lot about it, and it can be upsetting, right? So that's why it's very important for you to, if you're a young person under the age of 18, to have someone listen to the show with you, and then they can help you if you have questions, or you might have questions like why would this happen, or what is this about, and because abuse is not talked about. I mean, most people don't spend a whole lot of time talking about abuse, right? So that's why it's important for people to listen at your own discretion and make sure that you're okay listening to this, right? And so I've been living with this my whole life, so it's no problem for me to talk about this. But I mean, for most people who've grown up in relatively healthy families, if that's the case, then it is kind of disturbing to listen to material like this. There's lots and lots of survivors. Sadly enough, there's too many survivors of child abuse, and we all kind of know what it's like, know what this is about, right? But it's pretty sad that so many of us actually do understand what this is about, and this is why I'm doing my shows. It's especially this show, One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, is really just geared for adult survivors of child abuse, and it's my healing journey, right? As I'm going along, looking through this stuff and for myself, I find it helpful for myself. I just thought I would share it with people, and also just be another voice out here speaking out about what happens to children when they're abused and what they go through, and then what the issues are and the consequences of the abuse later on in life as an adult, right? And so that's why I do this. But it's sad that there's so many of us, and it does break my heart that there's just so many of us. So we're going to get right back into this article here, and this is we were taking a look at the whole self, damaged self, and that was on Tuesday. We were looking at that. And George Boyd says the impact of growing up in a dysfunctional family takes its toll on individuals growing up in these families, and so he goes on to list what sort of happens. Adults who grew up in these dysfunctional families may experience problems with addiction, overeating, chemical dependency, sexual compulsions, workaholism, or destructive gambling behavior. They may suffer from low self-esteem, not believing they deserve the good things in life. They may feel depressed or anxious and be uncertain why. And they may self-sabotage their goals and dreams and fail to utilize their potentials, unwitting acting out a life script written by early negative programming. And I believe that's sort of where we left off. They may have problems with managing money, making money, managing money, or settling down into a satisfactory career. All kinds of issues can happen. And, this is not every person who's been or grown up in a dysfunctional home would experience all of these things, right? But people who have grown up in a dysfunctional environment and may have been abused as a child may experience some of this stuff, right? So I don't relate to all of it, but I relate to some of it. I can, as far as gambling behavior, destructive gambling behavior, I definitely don't have a problem with that. Sexual compulsions, I don't have a problem with that. But chemical dependency and overeating was a huge issue, and overeating is still a huge issue for me. Chemical dependency, I guess you could say yes, it is, because I smoke cigarettes, and that's what I was talking about before. I have an addiction. I have an addictive personality, so I have to be very careful, what I do, and smoking cigarettes is the last one of my vices. I didn't let go of it when I let go of the drugs, right? At the age of 21, I decided I was going to no longer ever do drugs again, and that I was going to clean up my life and straighten up my life, and at the age of 21, and because I knew I was going to die. I was headed for the streets. I was headed for a life of, I could see my life before my eyes turning out to be what my brothers had done to their lives, which was to destroy their lives, their adult lives because of drug use, right? And I knew I was headed on the same road, and I wasn't taking care of myself. And at the age of 21, I had not ever taken care of my body, and I had been grown up abused, and so therefore my body, had never really done anything to try to take care of myself, and my parents never did anything to take care of me either. And so at the age of 21, I really decided to get off the drugs and really try, to focus on having a normal, decent life. It's taken me my whole lifetime to do this, but at least I'm off the drugs, and the only thing that I have left, like I said, is cigarettes. Thank God, because I've quit that already one time for over a year, so I know I can do it again. I just have to make up my mind again to do that, right? But food addiction is a huge issue. Overeating. I don't have any kind of problems like anorexia nervosa or purge, like what do they call that, binge eating. I don't do any of that. But what it is, I just like to eat, and I use food for comfort. So, if I'm feeling, for any reason that, anxious or nervous or, tired, overtired, anything like that in my daily life, my daily walk, which most of the time I'm extremely tired and working way too hard, which I think because I just work around the clock, basically. I just have to sleep for 5 or 6 hours, but other than that, I'm busy doing something. And so, quite often I'm thinking, just for energy's sake, I just keep going. I don't do any exercise, and I just keep eating. And, the weight, it doesn't go anywhere. And, I have to be careful not to put on too much weight. And so, it's hard. It is hard, for sure. A lot of people suffer from that kind of stuff, man, and a lot of it's not even due to growing up in a dysfunctional home, but that's sort of the things that can happen to people. And they said that they may suffer from low self-esteem, not believing they deserve the good things in life. I've actually heard people say that. I've heard survivors of who have grown up in dysfunctional homes, grown up in abusive environments. Maybe there was a lot of domestic violence in their home or abuse, and they grew up believing that they don't deserve anything good anyway. I've actually heard people from their mouths say this. I don't deserve anything anyway. I'm no good. And I had friends who were like that. I had friends like that when I was growing up as a teenager who would say stuff like that to me because a lot of my friends were being abused as well. And they thought they didn't deserve anything good in life, And then later, as we grew up and spent a lot of time together and really knew each other quite well, some of my friends actually even took that on into their adulthood, their young adulthood, and still believed that they didn't deserve anything good in their life. And, I used to be sad for them because I'd be like, no, you do deserve good things. I always thought my mother deserved good things. My mother was my main abuser. But I could see that she was suffering. I knew that she was suffering in that family. I knew that she was suffering in that marriage that she was in with my dad. And I knew that she had suffered from a childhood full of abuse. So I knew my mother was suffering, right? And I knew why she was suffering. I just couldn't figure out why she was hurting me. You know what I mean? Like why she would take it out on me. That was always a question in my mind. I couldn't figure out why. I didn't think I was that bad of a child that she would need to beat on me or that she would need to curse me or, do the things that she was doing to me, right? I didn't think I was all that bad. I would get beaten for asking to go to football games, right? That's the reasons my mom would beat me, because I was asking to do something. Or, people might think, well, what were you doing to cause your mother to have to beat you like that with a rolling pin, or to throw you around the room, or slam you in the back and throw you down the stairs and things like this. People might think, well, what was she doing? She must have been a really bad teenager. She must have been a really bad child. She must have been a bad kid. I had some bad behaviors, and that's because I grew up with no parenting. I grew up in a home where but the two parents that I had were not paying attention to try to teach me anything good. Right? They were there as keepers of the family, so they were there, but they were not. They were not providing any good information. Right? So I avoided them really at all times because they were abusive, and they weren't trying to teach us anything. They were just trying to punish us for our behaviors. So I learned a lot of extremely bad behaviors from them, and then I would get beaten for it. So that's that. And then my parents could justify it. Say, look what a bad child you are. Look what I wouldn't have to treat you this way if you weren't so bad. These types of things, right? And so but my mother, I could see that in her. That she was suffering, and my mother even believed that she did not deserve the good things in life. She once in a while she would break down and she'd say, I never deserved any of this. I didn't want this. I didn't want this life. I didn't want this abuse. I didn't want this marriage. I didn't want these children, right? She was quite often actually saying stuff like that. And because my mother was manic depressive, right? So she would bake cookies during the day, and then at night she'd be talking about suicide and killing herself, talking about killing me quite often. I should have killed you, and all these horrible things that she would say to me. And, the family was pretty forgiving. The siblings that were in the home, that were still in the home when I was growing up, and when the abuse was pretty bad, we would all try to help my mother. We'd try to, people must have thought we were just the most horrible kids, you know what I mean? But actually we were really trying, we were struggling within that home. There was no love, there was no care. It was all about my parents and their problems, right? And my dad was mentally ill, so it was all about him, all about his problems, all about, the fact that we were all just evil and the devil, and we were sent from hell, and all this stuff. And so we kind of didn't we didn't spend too much time trying to help our dad out. But our mom, we were trying to help our mom out all the time. Trying to be, I was trying to be on her good side for many reasons, and that was to avoid the abuse. First of all, I figured if I take her side on everything, even if I don't believe it's right, if I take her side, it might buy me a little bit of something, so that she'll, it might change her mind so that she won't abuse me, right? Mistreat me. So that was one reason why I took my mom's side. But another reason was just the reality of the fact I knew, the treatment that my dad was treating my mother horribly. I knew she was suffering in this family, and I really wanted to sort of back her up, and I could see what he was doing to her, and I could see that it was wrong. And so I took her side for many reasons, right? So, but she didn't think she deserved anything good in this life, There's been many times she'd sit around and say, well, this is just life, and it's the way my life is, and I must have done something extremely bad in my last lifetime or something, things like this would come out. She'd be like, I don't know what I did to deserve this, but this is all I'm going to get. And she never reached for her goals. She never reached for her dreams. The one thing that she did do was she got her GED. My mother was born in 1927. She only, back in those days in the 1920s in Nova Scotia, most children didn't go to school much past the 10th grade. That would be, that'd be about it for schooling for those people. They were not concerned back in the 1930s about getting high school diplomas, right? These people were farming community people. They were quite often helping on the farms, actually always helping on the farms if they grew up on a farm. My parents were both born into farming families who were, busy people, right? And so school was just sort of not looked at as something that needed to be accomplished. My mom got her GED. She studied and got her GED when she was I don't know, well, I must have been about 12 years old, so she would have been, she was 38 when I was born. That means when she was 50. So when she was 50, she got her GED. And so that's an accomplishment, for a 50-year-old woman who's been abused all her life, had all of these kids, and just, well, she was an abuser too. But to actually take the classes and get her GED. So, she, once in a while, she would do stuff that, to try to help herself and to try to, to have a better outlook on life and stuff. But for the most part, she was so beaten down that, she didn't reach out for her goals. She reached out for, to do things that she felt she deserved to have in her life, you know what I mean? She didn't even have any bought-in clothes for years and years because my dad would not give her any money to buy clothes. Like there was, any extra money, my dad would be off buying him clothes. Like he would buy himself clothes, but none of the children, nobody else had anything. And my mom made her own clothes, and for years and years, right? And ran around in these dresses, these kind of raggy old dresses, right? And I'm not sure if she just liked that or what, but finally, she just started wearing normal clothes. I had never seen her wear like a bought-in outfit until I was probably, let's see, somewhere in my middle teens, you know what I mean, like mid-teen years, like 14 or so, Before that, she was always wearing these homemade dresses, right? And so she didn't even, she wouldn't even take care of herself. So we did not see a good example, you know what I mean, to think that we deserve good things in life, or that we should go after our dreams, that we should, get help if we need it, this type of stuff. It's absolutely horrific, And suffering from low self-esteem, I mean, that's a huge issue. And I had that problem for a long time. I think I've gotten through most of it. I think I have a little bit of it hanging around me all the time, but it's not enough to affect my the way that I approach things. You know what I mean? I've actually been able to sort of overcome that. But when I was a young teenager, I had a lot of self-esteem problems, and a lot of it was because of my body. Right? I hated my body. I just, I was so abused my whole life. I hated my body, and I hated what it was, what it represented. I was sexually abused at the age of 8 years old by my brother, and then to be abused by my parent, physically abused by my parents. I just hated my body. I just did not feel comfortable in my own skin, and because I was just told I was just worthless and useless, and that my parents hated me and I was evil. I felt that way. That's what I felt. I felt evil. I felt dirty. I felt like this horrible creature from hell. That's the picture that they painted for me on the inside of my mind, and it took me a long time to straighten that out. You know what I mean? I feel pretty good nowadays, but it has taken me a lifetime to straighten these things out that my parents did to me, and that that a sibling did to me. Right? Absolutely horrific. So they may feel depressed or anxious and be uncertain why. People who grow up in dysfunctional or abusive environments, they may self-sabotage their goals and dreams, fail to actualize their potentials, unwittingly act out a life script written by early negative programming, and these are huge issues, And the life script issue, that's a huge one. There's all kinds of good information about life scripts, from James, what's his name? James, let me think. Oh, it's just slipped my mind now. There's a website, Hope for Us. And Hope for Us has a website, and it's Hope for Survivors, I believe. I'll have to get that information for you guys. Well, I spent a lot of time on that website. Oh, James Bradshaw, or John Bradshaw. John Bradshaw, that's his name. John Bradshaw. And he has a whole lot of good information about life scripts and roles and boundaries and, all kinds of stuff, right? Toxic shame is another is something that's just huge with survivors, John Bradshaw, that's his name. He has lots and lots of books and information about toxic shame and whatnot. Now, I haven't had the money to buy any of these books or to get a hold of them, and haven't been able to find them, and I haven't had the time to go to the library to even look for them. But one day I'm going to, and I'm actually going to read these books because I know that they're going to be extremely helpful for me. I already went through the toxic shame stuff on here. I can't remember when we did the shows on toxic shame, but we spent a lot of time on it because that was something that I really needed to get in touch with because I had a lot of inner rage within me. And, and people might ask, well, do you still have that rage? I'd say no. For the most part, it's gone. And that's been able to voice my inner child's been able to get her voice out. So all of this stuff that I'm talking about here, on one child abuse survivor to another, is my inner child's voice being heard. Because, for so many years I've just been able to hold this public profile to the world that I'm fine, everything's great. I can hold down jobs, I have friends, I'm not ending up in the emergency room with suicide attempts. I mean, I was planning my suicides, but I was not telling anybody I was planning my suicides. I was having a hard time at the end of the day on my own, but most people, and actually hardly, it would be only a couple of people that actually do that side of me. The rest of the world sees me as a different person. If I didn't tell anybody about the situation in my life, they wouldn't know that there was any problems at all, because I'm able to present myself that everything is fine, everything is okay. What that did was it stifled my inner child because everything was not okay. You know what I mean? But by me being able to hold it together on the outside, but I wasn't doing anything to get help for my inside, which was my inner child and all of that stuff that needed to come out. And so, like, this show really is my inner child just speaking out about what happened and how I felt and, you know, what I was going through and what so many of us go through, you know. So it's been very, very helpful to be able to do that. But that whole toxic shame thing, I mean, I really had to get in touch with that because I had a lot of rage. And, you know, there's periods of time sometimes when things happen, and even now, even this last year, where that little tiny bit of a spark of that sort of still is sort of hanging around. But it's not rage anymore. You know what I mean? It's not like it was. And so I feel so much better, and I wish everybody else could be in that same position, you know what I mean, who's suffering with this and, you know, just feeling so down and so discouraged about this whole thing. And it's horrible. I really, you know, I hope that people will reach out, even if you don't want to disclose the abuse to anybody, because so many times many people just feel that they have to remain silent about it. But even if you do that, make sure that you do get some good self-help materials, you know, and work through allowing yourself to heal, which is what I'm doing, right? I'm just doing it publicly, right? But the thing is, I mean, I think it's so important for people to know what children who have been abused go through, right? I mean, there's written material about it, but do we hear very many voices? Not really. You know, I mean, I wrote a book and stuff, you know what I mean, and thankfully to Donna Shear and Sandra Potter, you know, for seeing my blog and actually suggesting that I should write a book and turn my blog into a book. I mean, that's very cool, and I owe them a lifetime of gratitude for that. But the thing is written material, you know, you don't hear from so many voices from survivors talking about what they go through, what it's been like for them, what they're still going through. And there's a few of them out here, and I happen to know a few of them, right? But, you know, I just wanted to be one more voice, right? So that was my main goal, was just to add my voice to everybody else's who's just already out here, because it's so important for us to break the silence when we can. And like I said, not everybody's going to be able to do that. I know lots of people who would prefer to stay silent and prefer to be anonymous and would prefer that no one ever found out about the abuse, and that's how they have to live their life, and that's fine. You know what I mean? But I would say just make sure that you do, you know, allow yourself to heal even by self-healing, you know, by self-help. And, you know, basically that's what I did, because I didn't trust anybody. So I was like, no, I just do this myself. You know, I just can't trust anybody. And but that's just because I've been so wounded my whole life. I just can't, you know what I mean? I just thought, no, I can't let somebody else get a hold of me and trash me the way my parents did. I just can't allow that. You know, like I've come too far. You know what I mean? I've made it too far now to allow that to happen again. And so, you know, I have you know, a little bit of trouble trusting people. But there's, you know, and really we do have to be careful, because you cannot trust everybody, right? There's always lots of groups out there and people talking about trust issues. Oh, you have to learn to trust, and you have to learn to trust people. Well, you know what it is? I mean, I want people to trust me, and I want to trust people, but I know people always have the potential to hurt people, right? And that's just the truth of it. People may present themselves to be trustworthy and end up hurting someone anyway, right? I mean, and it could happen to anyone. But in the meantime, you don't want to close yourself off and not allow yourself to enter into any relationships with anybody, because that's a sad, sorry life, you know. And I have lots and lots of friends, you know what I mean, who if somebody said, do you trust your friends? I'd be like, yes, I do. You know, I honestly do, and I think they trust me as well. But they've proven themselves trustworthy, you know. And I think it's important to be very careful about who you talk to if you disclose the abuse, and who, you know what I mean? Like, you know, you do have to be careful with that, because not everyone is trustworthy, and not everyone's going to do the right thing by you. You know, I've been hurt by people in my life who I've told you know, given them pretty much what I talk about here on this show, talking about my past and the abuse and whatnot, and to have them turn around and throw that back in my face. I've had that happen to me. I've lost friends over it. So that's the thing. It can happen, you know. And so you do have to be very careful of who you talk to and who you're going to tell this stuff to. But that's why I say, you know, if you're having a hard time, there's nothing wrong with reaching out for help, right? Counselor, therapist, group support, like I was saying yesterday on the show, anything like that, right? But or crisis line, but whatever you do, make sure you get some help, right? And they may have problems. George A. Boyd says they may have problems with making money, managing money, or settling down into a satisfactory career. And I think that can happen, you know, to anybody. Even you don't have to necessarily grow up in a dysfunctional home or or an abusive home to have to be dealing with stuff like that. You know what I mean? Lots of people have problems managing money and making money. You know, today's economy. I mean, there's lots of areas have lots of jobs, and some areas have no jobs. Depends on where you live, what's going on. But you know, it's not necessarily the easiest road for people right now. You know what I mean? As far as jobs go, and the skill levels are increasing more and more and more. You know, nowadays, you know, you have to be pretty specialized to get a good job, and because there's so many people that can do just the regular, normal, average type jobs, and so you almost have to specialize in something if you really want to get anywhere, and that's hard. You know, because that's going to probably involve school, you know what I mean, or some type of education. And so it's really, you know, it's a lot of work trying to make it these days. Everybody knows that. You know, so you don't have to necessarily have been abused to actually be going through that. But many times people who have been abused actually do have issues with that. And I know myself, you know, I don't know. I like to say I haven't really, you know, I'm on my own. I don't have any support from anybody except the person who actually helps support me is my sweetheart, who I've been with for 16 years, and he's a good man, you know what I mean. And he does, you know, we don't live together anymore because he's not mentally ill. He is terminally ill. He's terminally ill. He's got, you know, he's on borrowed time. You know, he's got as much time as God will give him. He was diagnosed, let me see, 11 years ago, or no, 2001. So 10 years ago, February 14th, Valentine's Day, 10 years ago he was diagnosed terminally ill with 2 years to 5 years to live, right? So 10 years later, he's still here. Even his doctors can't believe it. They're just like, I don't know what you've done. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it because you're still here and you're still, you know, there's no one else living in this country who has the disease that you have that's still alive since you've been diagnosed. There's been however many people diagnosed with the same disease, and they've all passed away. And he's still here 10 years later. They're like, okay, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it because it's obviously working. You know what I mean? So don't change anything. Just keep on going, right? So he's managing to hang out. And like he's a good man. He treats me very well, and I wouldn't be with him if he didn't. And that's the issue. You know, I mean, he's my sole support really here in my life. You know what I mean? As far as, you know, for help goes. But I can only rely on him so much because he's terminally ill. So I can't, you know, I try very hard not to stress him out. You know what I mean? He gets nosebleeds. You know, if he stresses out, like his nose bleeds, he gets because he's dying. You know what I mean? Like he's on borrowed time, and so you know he's on morphine. I mean the guy he's very very sick, and so I try not to, you know, stress him out. So basically what that does is push me to be self-sufficient, so that he won't worry about me. You know what I mean? I don't want him worrying about me when he's getting ready to pass on to the next life. You know, and I don't want him to leave this earth worrying about me, which he does. He worries about me quite a bit. And I tell him, don't worry about me, hon. I am fine. You know what I mean? Like, I'm fine. I'm doing well. So he knows, you know, that I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it happen. You know what I mean? To look after myself. You know, I really, and you know what? It's hard. It's extremely hard to be on your own, you know, with no parents that can help you. You know, there's lots of people have parents who will, you know, even if they're not happy about it, who will help their kids out even later in life, you know, if they need money or if they're having financial difficulties. There's no one in my life that will give me $5, you know what I mean? Except for my friends and my sweetheart. I would say my friends would even give me $5. But my family wouldn't give me a dime, you know what I mean? My dad throughout the years, even because he's living still, has actually been pretty cool about, you know, giving you $100 or a couple $100 if he, you know, just because he wants to, sort of thing. But he doesn't have any money, so it's not like he's got money, you know what I mean? The guy's on, you know, he's like on old age pension, and I wouldn't want his money anyway, you know what I mean? He's like, no, I'm old enough, I can support myself. I mean, look, I'm halfway through my life. I'm almost 50 years old, for God's sakes, you know. Well, 45. And the thing is, you know, to me, you know, it makes me feel happy that I can look after myself, you know what I mean? But I still have a hard time managing money and you know, trying to make ends meet and trying to make it work, you know what I mean? And it's hard on everybody out here, right? So it's not just me. I mean, everybody's sort of going through this. But I would say just keep some small goals. Keep working with some small goals that are obtainable. That's what I'm learning how to do. And then, you know, go from there, right? It's sort of little milestones, right? Just keep working one to another, and eventually, you know, hopefully it'll get us somewhere, right? So thanks everybody for being here. I'll be back on tomorrow morning, same time, same place, and tonight I'll be back on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio. So have a good day. You know, if you and like I said, if there's nobody around and you can't find anybody to talk to, and you're just feeling, oh my, you know, that you can't cope, and oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do, you phone a crisis line. That's what you do. You know, you do not ever give up, and you just phone a crisis line and you get some help. You know, or you stick around, right? And you allow yourself to get help where you can, right? It's so important. Your life does matter and it does count. And we do matter and we do count, right? I wouldn't be doing these shows otherwise. And so have a good day, everybody. We'll talk to you real soon. Take good care. Bye-bye.